Hello and welcome to UnJustified, where we always cover the truth, the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, on an unbiased and sometimes very unpopular opinion. If you're not a member of our newest channel, Unjustified Crimes, please join us over there as well. You can hit the link in the description box below. There is where we cover all of the breaking crime news. And let's get right into today's video. Here is just a couple of lives I have gotten today as they were being done live. Within the last couple of hours on this case, it seems like it's still developing. It's minute by minute. There's been a TikToker that has said that she actually seen Brian. She picked him up, gave him a ride. He kind of freaked out on him. So it's very, very developing. That video that I posted is right here if you want to check it out and haven't seen it yet. Okay, guys, here is the latest updates. There's going to be things in here with her family. Her family is actually in Wyoming doing searches of their own, so there's lots of things going on in it, and it is moving very quick. Hopefully soon we're going to be getting some answers here, and let's just try to work together, get anything we can, take in all the information we can, and bring Gabby home.
The search for Gabby Petito is spanning several states and jurisdictions, which is why we find ourselves here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where Gabby Petito's family has come to search for her themselves. They're trying to drum up interest and to keep Gabby's disappearance in the news so that they can try to get as many people to help find her as possible. And so I encourage you to listen to this podcast and to share it with as many people as you can. Let's start with what we know. 22-year-old Gabby Petito, who's from Blue Point, Long Island, moved to Florida in 2019 to live with her then boyfriend, now fiance, Brian Laundrie. Her family says that on July 2nd, the two embarked on a cross-country journey. They packed Gabby's white Ford van and headed west, hitting popular national parks along the way while documenting the entire experience on YouTube and Instagram. On video, their cross-country trip looked beautiful. Their relationship loving and affectionate. They were supposed to end up in Portland, Oregon in October. But now Brian Laundrie is back in Florida with Gabby's van, and Gabby is nowhere to be found. On the ground since yesterday, what has it been like?
It's been pretty crazy here. Just trying to touch base with law enforcement, let them know we're here, that we're here for whatever they need to assist them in the investigation. We're committed to finding Gabby and doing whatever it takes to help them.
And tell me what you're doing here to help people find Gabby. Who have you been talking to?
We've just been out here basically handing out some flyers for the most part. We don't have any people that we're with that are out in the woods. We're not out in the woods. That's not what we're here for. We're just here to support law enforcement with whatever they need. And
you want to also just jog people's memories, right? Like if you happen to see someone or if someone sees the poster, maybe they'll say something.
Yes. Yesterday when we were handing out some of the flyers, we're putting up in some of the businesses. We walked into one business in particular, and as soon as I walked in, the lady recognized my face. And I had the poster in my hand, and she just started to tear up. It was really touching. So they're very aware of it out here. This is a very transient area, which we're learning, and that's one of the other reasons why we're out here. A lot of people coming in and out, so we're just asking that anybody who has been to this area, has visited, taking pictures, videos, whatever it may be, to go back and look at those and take a look to see if there's anything that may be in there that could help us and help the police do what they have to do to find Gabby.
We know the one person who might know where Gabby is, right?
Yes.
We know there's one person who knows where she is, but they can't get him to talk. Is that ridiculous to you?
It's absolutely absurd. I fully understand a person's constitutional rights, the right to not speak in a situation like this, but everything you see on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, you refer to her as the love of your life. Everything seemed to be happy. You were on a cross-country trip with her, and suddenly you're silent. Why? Why are you silent? Whatever may or may not have happened, you need to speak up. This is about Gabby and finding her, bringing her home to us, so we know she's safe. It's unfathomable why he's not speaking.
It was revealed that your wife's last message that she received from Gabby said, "Service poor in Yosemite." That made no sense to you because she wasn't supposed to be there, right?
The timeline now that we know that the van and he were back in Florida on September 1st, and looking at the time frame from the last text messages, it's really calling into question who sent them, where they came from, and we don't know, and it's upsetting.
The video, I'm sure you saw it, right?
Yes, we had a chance to review it.
What did you think when you saw it? What were your initial thoughts?
It was very upsetting to see them, a little bit of a disagreement, seeing her so upset. It was upsetting.
And we had spoken to your wife before. She said she had no hesitations about her going on this trip at all.
No, none at all. They took a trip within the last year and a half, and they enjoyed it. They loved it. They had done a lot of other trips in the meantime. They had fun, and they were really looking forward to it. When they were at our house before they left on July 2nd, they were so excited. They were getting the van ready, and they couldn't wait to go.
And to see them, fighting and her so distressed, and actually the cops reacting the way they did, what do you hope? What do you wish those cops would have done?
I can't comment too much on or speculate on what I wish they would have done. What was done is done. They're traveling together in a small van together, so I'm sure there's going to be moments when you get a little frustrated or whatever it may be. But they did what they did, and that's it.
You're visiting random campsites. You're talking to random strangers because you don't know where she is, but Brian does. What do you want Brian to do?
I just want Brian to speak up and tell us where she is. Where was the last place you were with her? That way we can bring her home.
What is the latest in this case?
Sure. So I think some of the latest is that we have a new FBI tip line that we're trying to get out there for anybody who may have seen Gabby or Brian and their vast travels, certainly in the last 3 weeks. And that number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Another detail is that we are now the lead investigating agency in this, working alongside the FBI and still working alongside the Suffolk County Police Department. Also new is the fact that we've now identified Brian as a person of interest in this case, and the fact we have revealed that we believe he was back here in Northport roughly 10 days before her family reported her missing.
What new information leads you to call him a person of interest now?
Well, we're now the lead agency, so we can call him what we need to. We are certainly interested in speaking with him, which has been a challenge. To define him as a person of interest is something people have just been asking for, so we've answered that.
So you haven't been able to interview him even once since you have reports that Gabby was missing?
That's correct. On Saturday, September 11th, we visited his parents' residence where both he and Gabby lived. We were basically met by the family with a piece of paper with how to contact their attorney. And we did find her vehicle, which we believe he drove here to Northport, which we took.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be looking for with the van?
We've had the latest and greatest in FBI technology and our own skill set. Going through that, we went through that yesterday. We certainly did a cursory look on that vehicle. Initially, there was nothing suspicious on the outside, but sometimes you only get one shot at these things. So we made sure we had all of the experts from the FBI there to use their skill set. They certainly do it a lot. So I think that we're hopeful that there'll be some details that come out in that. It's going to take a little bit of time. Unfortunately, I think people want an answer right now. I think this case may take some time.
Everybody's asking, where's Gabby? And it seems to me that the one person who would know where she is isn't talking. What do you think of that in terms of, a police investigation?
Well, it's not helpful. That's the bottom line. And we're in a position where we're holding out hope that Gabby's alive. Maybe she's lost in the woods somewhere. Time is of the essence in getting facts and getting details in this case. Certainly the last known person to potentially have been with her, or we can rule that out, or whatever the case may be. We need those details. To simply say nothing and to basically put out a statement yesterday that they'll remain in the background is hurting this investigation for someone that he has said is the love of his life.
And that seems odd to us. I mean, from a police perspective, what does that?
When you say us, I'm assuming you mean humans, because I think that's odd to everyone.
This investigation is happening on two fronts. Brian is in Florida. You're trying to get information from him. At what point can you bring him in for questioning? Have you done that already, or have you tried?
Certainly, we've made an attempt that Saturday. People have, with every single person we come in contact with or potentially arrest is, they have the right to remain silent. It's the Fifth Amendment in this country. Brian, if he chooses to, could potentially never talk about
When Gabby's mom spoke to her, the family says August 25th. They FaceTimed, and Gabby said they were on their way through Grand Teton and was traveling to Yellowstone. A few days later, she received some text messages from Gabby's phone number, but she wasn't convinced they were from her. We now know it's because the text said very briefly, "No service in Yosemite," which was another national park more than 800 miles away from Yellowstone, which is where she was headed. By September 11th, she filed a missing persons report with Suffolk County Police, where she Brian Laundrie behaving in this case.
You have to look at this in two ways. First of all, he's behaving the way any attorney representing him would tell him to behave. All right? Don't say anything, just be quiet. The law provides to him in terms of the presumption of innocent and not saying anything that's going to incriminate himself. The other side is that the way an investigator would look at it, the way I looked at cases for years, when a person refuses to talk to you, it speaks volumes in terms of where you should be looking when you're investigating these cases. This case could easily be solved if he offered information, but it's not an easy case to work on. It's not an easy case to solve. First of all, it would be wonderful to locate this young woman and find her healthy and safe someplace. But at this point in time, they're looking in other directions. So essentially what they're going to have to do is focus on him and then focus on any information they can glean from many, many, many different sources on his whereabouts from the last time the family spoke to her and knew they were speaking to or communicating with her, up to the point when he arrived back in Florida.
Their family members are out there in Wyoming right now. They're joining the search for her. They're trying to look for her. But at the same time, Northport police in Florida are saying Brian Laundrie was driving in a van with her cross country, and he hasn't shared any information about where she might be, about how they might direct their search.
She may not be in Wyoming. It's a national park. She could be anywhere along the way from Wyoming to back in Florida, which is why they're going to have to use resources which are readily available to them in order to track the path of that vehicle from the time it left Wyoming to the time it arrived back in Florida. And that could be any number of things that they could do. They could track cell phone data. They could track license plate readers every time the car went through a toll booth. They can track fueling depots where he may have stopped to fuel up the car. There's so many cameras that are out there these days that can spot a vehicle, and the technology that law enforcement has in order to track these vehicles can be pretty amazing.
Yesterday, the Laundrie family released a statement, and I think it was striking on especially because of how cold it sort of sounded, right? They said, on behalf of the Laundrie family, it is our hope that the search for Miss Petito is successful, and that Miss Petito is reunited with her family. From that perspective, I mean, Brian was engaged to her, right? As we were led to believe from the Instagram post and from what the family is saying. He's calling her Miss Petito now. What's going on there?
Well, that's lawyer speak. They didn't prepare that statement. Whoever's representing the family in this matter drafted that and released it to the public. That's not a statement that anyone would issue involving the fiance of a loved one. This is clearly the lawyers are now blocking any intervention from law enforcement into this family.
And I mean, law enforcement seem to be pretty frustrated with the fact that they can't talk to Brian Laundrie, or they haven't been able to talk to him and gotten a really good idea as to what his last steps were and where she might be.
Look, it's frustrating, but it's only one avenue. Speaking to a suspect or someone, a person of interest, as they're calling him at this point, that's only one avenue. There are so many other avenues I'm sure they are pursuing in order to locate her. You have the FBI involved. You have the Suffolk County Police Department involved. You have the law enforcement in Wyoming involved. You have a wealth of resources that are going to be looking at this investigation. The fact that he won't speak just tells you that you're looking at the right person and that he's the person that you should be tracking. It's not as if you have to wonder who the potential suspect is or who the potential target is of this investigation. So now go talk to his friends, see who he interacted with when he came back to town. Start talking to them. Believe me, there is a wealth of work that could be done on this case that will provide important leads to investigators.
So if you were leading the search for Gabby Petito, what would you be doing right now?
I would be, as a prosecutor, making sure that all the agencies involved in this investigation were tracking down every possible way to determine where he has been from the time he came back to Florida to the time he was last seen with her, a visual sighting and interaction with her, and using the resources, whether they be cell phone records, whether they be license plate readers, whether they be cameras on throughways and freeways, whether they be cameras in gas stations, any type of technology that is out there that has the ability to track is what you want to look at. Okay, I would be sending law enforcement teams to different locations where they may have been last seen to interview some witnesses there. I wouldn't be so focused on speaking to him. Okay, you know who your target is. Okay, so go out now and find information relating to that target that's going to bring you ultimately to a point where hopefully you'll be able to find this young woman.
One of the reasons why the family wants to put this out there so much in the media is because they want to encourage people to come forward. You know, any little thing they might have seen could be significant. Can you talk about how, you know, maybe even a gas station that he stopped along the way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You may stop in a gas station. You may get interview someone in a gas station and say, yeah, he stopped here, got gas. And you know what? I saw him get out of the car and put something in the dumpster, you know. Oh, okay. Do you have a video? And sure enough, now you have a video. It's pieces of a puzzle like that that'll bring this case to fruition. You know, put the young woman's picture out there, get the public involved. Someone saw them at some point along the way. And if they haven't already found those people and haven't already started talking to those people, they eventually will come forward and give you that information. Now, this is not to say that this case will be solved overnight, okay? Because generally speaking, these are not. This investigation could take quite some time. Putting together the pieces of this kind of a puzzle can be time consuming.
Well, and while the search for Gabby continues, police say Brian Laundrie continues to be silent. His family attorney released a statement recently saying he is staying silent based on legal counsel. This has the police chief of Northport, who is the lead agency, pleading with him on Twitter to speak with detectives and share what information he has about where he last saw Gabby. Gabby's family is also pressuring Brian, suggesting he should be more concerned about his missing fiancée. Again, I encourage you to share this podcast and to keep talking about Gabby Petito to help generate leads for the family. If you do know anything about this story, you're urged to call the FBI. You can reach them at 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Gabby, Brian, okay. What's going on? How come you're crying?
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
An emotional Gabby Petito talking to officers in Moab, Utah, after the couple was pulled over back on August 12th when a witness reported they were fighting. This is about 2 weeks before she was last heard from.
It's just, some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean.
Tell me what's going on.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her, so I locked the car and I walked away from her.
Gabby's boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, says she hit him.
What was the reason behind the slapping and stuff?
What was it you were attempting to accomplish by slapping?
I was trying to get him to stop telling me something.
In the end, police decided to separate the couple.
He's going to go to the hotel. I'm going to give you the keys to the van. Alrighty? So, here's that.
What happened after that is a mystery, and police in Northport, Florida say Brian Laundrie is still not talking to them about Gabby's disappearance.
2 people went on a trip, 1 person returned, and that person that returned isn't providing us any information.
Gabby's family wrote Brian Laundrie's family this letter begging for help. You were both so happy that Brian and Gabby got engaged and were planning to spend their lives together. Please, if you or your family has any decency left, please tell us where Gabby is located. Tell us if we are even looking in the right place.
This girl right here, this is what matters. That is it. I'm asking for help, everyone at home.
News Nation's Brian Etten is actually joining us now live in Northport, Florida right now, and he's been following the case.
Absolutely. Hey, Brian, so what's it been like out there? I mean, you're like boots on the ground per se out there. What's it been like?
Yeah, so we're outside Brian Laundrie's parents' house right now. We've been out here for the last 3 or 4 days, just waiting to see if he'll come out, if the parents will come out, if he's finally going to talk to police. I mean, every day the detectives make these pleas. Gabby's family makes a plea to him. Please tell us what you know. Tell us the last place you saw Gabby. And so far, he still hasn't come out and he's not cooperating.
What other details have you managed to gather just being there in Northport? Obviously, yes, waiting for him to come out would be a major break, not only in the story, but potentially in the case. Is there anything else, though, that has really risen up from wandering around more or less the hometown of this couple?
Well, it's interesting in the neighborhood, sort of seeing things develop over the last couple of days. It was sort of calm the first few days, but now the neighbors are really getting frustrated. Saying, that they support Gabby. We just drove by a house that has signs in the front yard now saying that Brian Laundrie should talk. There's even a protest planned for later today outside his parents' house. So people are getting much, much more frustrated here that he's not saying anything. And just about a half an hour ago, we got the latest update from Northport Police. They said that basically they are making progress, but no huge breaks in the case. And the investigation is basically just ongoing at this point.
So do we know for sure that Laundrie and his family are still at the home? Do we know if they've gone anywhere, maybe out of state anywhere, trying to get away from this?
That's a good question. So we know that they were there in the beginning of all of this because we saw the parents coming and going. You'd see the lights go on at night. But the last day or so, I've really been wondering whether they somehow snuck out of the house and are in a different location because there's been literally no movement at the house. I'm just sort of looking at it right now. There were no lights on last night when we were here. We were here very, very late. The police chief, though, did make clear to us last night that they know where Brian Laundrie is, but they didn't want to give us that information.
Gotcha.
Has anyone from Gabby's family been by the house while you've been there in their own attempts to try and make contact with the fiance?
Yeah, we've been wondering whether the dad was going to come out here because we know that he's in Northport now. He lives in Vero Beach, which is on the other side of the state, but he came over here to assist with the investigation. And we were talking about that yesterday. Like, is it possible that he could come out and sort of hand deliver a note or something to the house? We haven't seen that happen. We do know that Gabby's family, the mom and dad, both wrote a letter to Brian's parents yesterday, which was in that piece. Yeah, you have it right there. I mean, just such an emotional, sad, heartbreaking letter, basically just pleading with the family saying, please have Brian talk to us. Whatever you can do, Gabby, please, and saying at least just tell us whether we're even searching in the right place.
People who may not be familiar with the name Gabby Petito, talk to us a little bit about her following, her presence online, and just how this has been able to capture so many eyeballs across the country.
Well, I think people are so interested because it's just so mysterious. It's Gabby Petito. She was traveling across the country with her fiance, Brian Laundrie, for the last couple of months. They left from Long Island. They were going through all the national parks in Utah and Wyoming. And she had this somewhat popular Instagram page and YouTube channel where she was documenting their journey. And they just looked like the perfect, most beautiful, happy, young, in love couple doing this incredible adventure across the country. That's what the video is portrayed anyway. Yesterday, when that body camera video came out, though, from Utah, from the incident they had in Utah, sort of painted a totally different picture. We saw that there was definitely some major issues happening here between the couple.
Brian, you cover a lot of major stories for News Nation. What do you think it is about this particular missing persons case that has really captured the national narrative and the attention not only across the U.S., but even beyond our country's borders?
Well, I think it's the mystery of it, obviously. I think that, when you see the video of Gabby Petito, she just seems like such a nice person. You obviously feel for her. You feel for her family. And then there's just this real strange question of why the fiance will not talk and will not cooperate with police. And I think that has really just enraged the nation.
And so, Brian, obviously, like we've been hearing from the police department saying over and over how 2 people went on this trip, 1 person returned, and they even found the vehicle. Any word on if they've found anything else in the vehicle or have any leads in there at all?
So they're being tight-lipped. They've actually told us flat out, look, we know more than we're telling the media. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes that you don't know about. We know when they looked at the van, they said there was nothing strange that stood out to them, but then they had the FBI come in and sort of do a deep processing of the van, and we don't know what the outcome of that was. But something interesting we did learn today that sort of came out during the press conference that I wasn't expecting to hear. They did say that they do not have Gabby Petito's cell phone, which would obviously be valuable to all of this. Yeah. And then the police still don't have that in their custody.
Awesome. Well, Brian, we appreciate you staying on the story. When is your next report so people know when to tune into News Nation?
Yeah, we'll be on News Nation at rush hour, which is at 5 o'clock Central.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Brian Eaton joining us live from Northport, Florida. Thank you, Brian.
So far, only one member of Laundrie's family has spoken on the disappearance of his fiancée, Laundrie's sister, Casey Laundrie.
In an interview with ABC's Good Morning America, she said, "Me and my family want Gabby to be found safe. She's like a sister, and my children love her. All I want is for her to come home safe and sound, and this to be just a big misunderstanding." She also added that she has not been able to speak with her brother since he came home from the couple's cross-country trip. Meanwhile, Petito's family has made several appearances in the media as details of the search slowly trickle out.
Petito's father, along with an aunt and a cousin, were guests on News Nation's Ashley Banfield last night. Here's a portion of that interview, which includes his response to Laundrie's sister.
I'm joined now by 2 members of Gabby's family. Joe Petito is her father, Zoe Wickman is her cousin, and Mary Wickman is Gabby's aunt, and they are seated beside each other. Joe, if I can just start with you, any news, anything from the authorities, anything that might advance this case?
No, I mean, nothing that I have, so to be honest, I get the information almost as you guys get it. So no, I don't have anything new. I got some new frustrations based on a statement that was made, but all that comes second because we don't have Gabby, and we're still on, job number 1, and that's get Gabby. Right? So, we haven't lost focus of that, and that's something we're still spearheading. We got to get her home safe, and we'll look at all the rest of the stuff when that comes to it, because that stuff was on the 12th, and now, we know we had contact with her on the 25th, so that still doesn't help me get to my objective.
And the objective, obviously, is to try to find out anything that might be possible, just in terms of what the last contact her fiance had with her was. And there's just nothing coming from them. To that end, Joe, you and Gabby's mom, combined families now, released a public letter to the Laundrie family. And this is what you wrote. You said, Gabby lived with you for over a year. She was going to be your daughter-in-law. How can you keep her location hidden? Please, if you or your family has any decency left, please tell us where Gabby is located. Tell us if we're even looking in the right place. Joe, the only word that we publicly have heard after that letter came out publicly was Cassie Laundrie, just with that very quick clip that we aired for ABC saying we just wish that she'd come home safely. We loved her too. How did that land with you?
It actually made a lot of sense, and it brings the things to light because we've been looking for Gabby for how long, and they've known that Brian's been there since the first. So if she was, that was a very nice, well-written statement, but it does explain, If that's that family's version of love, to just ignore and not care that someone's gone and people are looking for them and the entire country's looking for them, I mean, that explains how we got to where we are today. Because, I mean, look at their version of what they call love. So, I mean, where was she?
It's just bizarre to see this. I mean, just to see no response to this extraordinary letter that you sent out.
And joining us now live with more on that interview is News Nation's Ashley Banfield, who spoke with the Petito family on her show last night.
Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm sure we're interrupting a very busy schedule as these stories continue to develop. In fact, this one, I imagine you'll probably have even more on coming up this evening. What can you share about what Banfield is working on?
Well, it looks as though, and Brian Enton is covering this just fantastically from Florida, but it looks as though the community is really coming together in Northport, Florida, and they're planning to hold a vigil. That's always great, not just because it feels good, but because it gets the message in the press. And the more people see this, the chance for tips to come in. And that's something this family has said over and over. Please put the 1-8 somewhere, saw Gabby last. And you'd be shocked how tips continue to come in these missing persons cases months after the fact. So it's important that people still see this story.
I'd like to ask you a question that I asked Brian, because I'm interested in the take from the journalist side of things. You've covered a lot of major stories during your career. For you, what is it about this one that you think is really breaking through the noise to get out to the greater public?
Sure. I mean, you and I both know that there are people, every day, sadly, across the country. So why this one? Well, there's a very weird piece that makes no sense to anyone. That is that a young man came back driving Gabby's van without Gabby in it, and Gabby's missing. You would think, stands to reason, he would say where he last saw her, where they parted, what were the circumstances of him being alone in the van and driving home from the trip early, but nothing. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that doesn't make sense. An innocent person would never clam up and not say anything to a family that is desperate. The tone of that letter alone, I think we can all agree, makes you heartsick. Thinking these parents are desperate to know anything. Just tell us if we can look in the right place. Yeah. So I think this is one of the reasons why this story is really relevant. Apart from the fact that we all just want to grab Brian Laundrie and say, why are you not talking? I think that's the big issue here.
Yeah. Is there anything that could possibly compel him to talk? I mean, obviously getting a lot of media coverage on this, and like we've been reading in different stories, there's a lot of visuals going on and stuff. Anything that can make him say anything, or even the family?
Great question. Here's how the law works in this country. We have a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate ourselves. So he has every right to say nothing. Morally, totally different story. But legally, he has the right to remain silent. He hasn't even been arrested or read those rights. He has them. In emergency situations, police will often blow past that. Try and interview someone just to find somebody because the circumstances are exigent. Maybe we can find this person still alive. Later on, if there's a court case, you can't use any of it. But the police usually have the thinking early, I don't care about the court case now. What I really care about is finding this person. So can they physically shake it out of him? No. Can they bring him in and ask him to talk and not read him his rights and not have the benefit of using that in a court case later? Yes. But can you make force drink? No.
And that's an important thing to put out there, too, as this message continues to grow in volume, to reach further into the community around the Laundrie's homes, is that he is protected by rights. And don't push too far past those as the story continues to develop. Now, you've had the opportunity to speak with Gabby's father a couple of times. Have you been able to garner anything from those interactions as far as the additional efforts that the family is making, or perhaps those community efforts that we heard Brian talking about?
Right. Well, one of the things that I found was particularly interesting about speaking with Gabby's father, two-pronged. Number one, he reacted to what Kathy Laundrie said Good Morning America yesterday. And that was that, gee, we hope, Gabby comes home safe. We all love her. And his reaction, as you saw, was, that's love? You see us all here desperately trying to find her. If that's your version of love, that's why we're here today in this situation. So that was quite compelling. But then also what I found very interesting was Cassie said, I sure did misunderstanding. Well, now I'm starting to see why Brian Laundrie is clamming up if he's an innocent man. And that is that he might know something that looks terrible for him. Maybe he's not guilty of anything. But if he says something, it could implicate him and open a world of hurt for him. I get that. I get it all. It's still, morally speaking, there's a woman out there in a grieving family. So you have to sort of weigh your rights versus what is the right thing to do. But then, also I specifically said to Joe Petito and Petito's aunt and cousin, you saw that video out there with the Moab police, right? Yeah. And she was apoplectic, devastated, crying uncontrollably for the entire episode that they were with her. That lasted for an hour. They said that not one time was she not weeping, crying, or rubbing her knees. And I asked the family, is that the Gabby that you know? Is that the person that you know? And they said no.
Well, Ashley, you guys have been covering this extensively on your show. What else can viewers expect to see next up in your coverage in this story?
Well, the Northport police have, interestingly enough, made contact with Brian Laundrie's sister, and they've questioned her. Well, at least they've had a conversation with her. I don't know how formal it was, sadly, but maybe more expectedly. It didn't yield much, they tell us. They are also talking to Joe Petito, who obviously would make he'd avail himself for any law enforcement, desperate to find his daughter. But they're also saying that conversation is helpful just in terms of putting the pieces together. Beyond that, it's a little hard to know if there's developments, though. And if there are, there may be a criminal case in this. So we also have to be very patient and understand that police might not share everything with us to preserve the prestige of an investigation and potentially a prosecution.
Right, because every single person listening to every single one of these things, depending on where the case ends up falling, that county could be a potential juror. So there is certainly that to keep in mind from the law enforcement side as well. Ashley, we do appreciate you joining us here today.